Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics for the PowerBasic Windows compiler. Today, we will look at the use of tree views on your dialogues. Today, we're going to look at the tree view control. This is a control you've probably seen many times before, as it forms the backbone of the File Explorer in Windows, and is used to display many other kinds of hierarchical information. The TreeView control is in here. So all we're going to do in this basic form is we're going to drag a tree view onto the screen and size it. Now we hit the little test button to test our dialog. We'll see that there's our tree view and there are our items in the tree view. Let's put some sample ones in just to let us see how it works. So that's all we're going to do in the form designer. We'll now exit from that. We will save our form and we will pop back into the main window. If we have a look at our dialog, we will see down at the bottom of the dialog definition is the control add TreeView command with the handle for the tree view. So we'll just rename this one and we're going to call it TV Books. We'll just snip up to the top of the code where the tree view is specified and we'll just paste its new name in. Now if we actually run the code, we'll see the dialog coming up on screen. Before we start the code for the tree view, there's one line of code I'd like to put in at the beginning of the application. One of the things you may have to do during your development of an application is to change the font used in the application. At the moment this is quite a small font, and having developed the application you may get requests from your users to ask you to increase the font size. And this may involve going through many forms changing the font size for the objects. However, an easy way to do it is to reset the default size for the font. So let's go back to where the code was actually started, right to the PB main. Now in the PB main, this is the command which will show the first dialog. What we're going to do is we're going to use a dialog default font command to amend the default font used in all dialogues within this application. So all it does is dialog default font, the name of the font you wish to use, best in this case to use one that's standard for Windows, the font size, and the ANSI character set. So if we run the program now, you'll see that not only has the font size increased, but the dialog has proportionally increased in size to match the size of the objects on it. This is a very easy way of resizing your dialogues and the font used on them globally throughout the whole application, even after you've actually coded it. So now that we've got the dialog on screen of a reasonable size, with a reasonable and easy to read font, we'll now go in and actually do the code for our tree view. And we'll put some code on the exit button, I think, so we can actually exit. So if we go into our callback function, our event handler, if we have a look where the abort function is, and we'll do a dialog end. That's the one line of code that will close off your dialog, and since it's the only dialog on the screen, it will end the application. So what we want to do is we want to populate it when the dialog is initialized. So up here at the top where the event for the initialized dialog sits, we're going to create a new function whose job it will be to populate our tree view. So in our new function, populate tree view, we're going to give it two parameters. The handle for the dialog and the handle for the object on the dialog, in this case the tree view. So we'll just pop down to the end of our code and we will start creating this new function. So there we have our new function with its two parameters, the dialog handle and the handle to the tree view. Now we're going to need some local variables, which we'll cover as we get to them. So the first thing to do when you populate a tree view is not to assume that the tree view is currently empty. Therefore, you'll want to reset the tree view to clear any information that's currently sitting in it out. So the TreeView reset command does that job very nicely. takes two parameters, the dialog handle and the TreeView handle. This will clear out any information that's currently sitting in the TreeView. Now at this point we know there's nothing in the TreeView, therefore we want to insert the root item, the item at the very beginning of our TreeView. So there are a number of parameters we're going to set up. First of all is the parent. Since it's the root item, the parent will be 0, indicating this is the first node on the tree. We will specify another variable called after, which is going to tell the TreeView command where our piece of text is going to appear in the current node. Since this is a parent we're doing, it's pretty academic which one we use, but we'll use the TVI first. Now in TreeViews you can also have images, but we'll cover the images in a later video. We're just going to do plain text today. So I'm going to set both of the variables to 0 for the image list pointer and the select image pointer. And the piece of text we're going to put at the root of our TreeView is the word books. Now having set our variables up, we now have to insert the item into the TreeView. And we'll be using the TreeView insert item command to perform that function. This again takes a number of parameters, the dialog handle, the handle to the TreeView, it takes the parent, which in this case is 0, it takes the h after, so it's going to be the first element on the TreeView, and it takes two parameters for the images, which in this case are 0, and it finally takes the last parameter, which is the text we wish to insert into our TreeView. Once it's inserted that, it passes back a handle to the node we have just put into the system. Now since we're going to be using this later on, we will store this in a separate variable called parent. Now if we actually run that code now, we should see the one item books being added to our TreeView. And there it is, the word books appears at the top. Now what we want to put underneath books is a child of books. So let's put our second item in. This will be the next level in our tree. And we're going to call this one fiction. We'll be adding a non-fiction one later. Now since none of the other variables have actually changed, we can just paste straight in the piece of text we had before to insert another item. Now the parent has already been populated as the number we got back from the previous function. And everything else is exactly the same, and the only thing we've changed is the text to say fiction. So if we run this one now, we would see that we have a little plus beside the books indicating it has children, and underneath that we have fiction. So we've successfully added one element to our node. Now to add a second one, we can quite happily do exactly the same for non-fiction. And again, it's the same parent as in up here, and the only thing we've changed is the actual text. So if we run this one now, we'll see that under books we have both fiction and non-fiction. If we want those sorted alphabetically, what we can do is in here we can change the after from first to be sorted. So if we run it now, our two child elements underneath books should now be sorted alphabetically, which they are. So we've got two elements on the tree. Now it would be quite laborious to add all the additional elements underneath this one by one. In most cases you would be expecting to get all of this from somewhere else, probably reading from a file or reading from a database, or possibly even information supplied by the user of the application. Another thing which is useful to do is to expand some of the nodes in the tree. As we saw before, the books node is the only node visible with a little plus beside it, and the two children of that node are not visible. However, we can use the TreeView set expanded command, pointing at the parent, which is books, and using the true command to say you want it expanded. So if we run this one now, we would find that automatically both fiction and non-fiction were expanded, because you've asked it to expand any node underneath books. So if we want to add some books to our list, we could do it by coding up exactly the way we've done it. But what we're going to do is we want to actually read to see where we're actually going. So we want to add an entry to an existing node. So we're going to create an inbuilt function to perform that. Since you're doing stuff with nodes all the time, having generic functions to perform this is very useful and saves a lot of coding. So we're going to create a generic function called getTVNodeHandle, which to work out where the handle is for the node we're actually wanting to do something with. And if it cannot find the handle, it will return as 0. In other words, false. So we're going to run down the tree looking for the fiction node. So let's create this new function. So again, we're taking a number of parameters. We're taking the dialog handle, we're taking the handle to the TreeView control, we're taking the name of the node we're looking for, and we're going to return in this variable the payment. And we'll return either a true or false to say we found it or not. So we set some local variables up for the payment, a variable to be used to see whether we found it or not, a piece of text in the node we're actually looking at, and another variable for the handle to the current item. So since we're starting from the very beginning of the tree, we want to first get the handle to the root node. In other words, books. So there's a command called TreeViewGetroot. And again, same kind of parameters, dialog, TreeView control, and you're passing the handle that comes out of that to hPayment. Now, having got the root, we can then get the first child of that root. And again, we're using the payment in here, and we're passing it to longFound. Now, if longFound is actually 0, it means we cannot find the next child. So that would certainly indicate an empty tree. But if it is greater than 0, then we know we've actually found it. So at that point, we can then get the text in that node to find out what it's called, using the TreeViewGetText command, and using the longFound value we had up here, and sending the value to strText. Now if strText is the same as the name we passed into the function, we will know that we've actually found the one we're looking for. So we can then populate the payment handle with what we found, which is a pointer to the node. And at that point we can see the function is true and we don't have to go any further. However, if this first one doesn't actually find, then we've got more to do. We'll have to look on to the next handle. As there may be many nodes in the tree and we'll have to step through them one by one, we'll do a while next loop to do this. So in this while next loop, we're doing it while longFound is greater than 0. We're picking up the current node we're on, and we're using the TreeViewGetNext command to get the next node down, and again with the same parameters, using the current item, and we're passing the node we find to longFound. And if it is indeed greater than 0, we do exactly the same again, getting the text that's on that node, comparing it against what we passed into the function. If it's found, we can exit. If not, the while loop repeats. And if the while loop actually finds nothing at some point, then it will drop out the loop. And we'll just close off our commands and the end function. Now, assuming we've coded all that correctly, it should return the handle of the node we're looking for. So we go back up to where we called this function. So if this returns true, we have indeed found the node. Let's just do a quick compile. Yep, it's syntactically okay. So what do we do once we've found the node itself? Well, we'll want to set the text for the next node we want to add on as a child of the fiction node. So we're going to give it the name of a book, and we'll ensure our after variable is set to sorted. There are three options we can have here, either sorted, first, which would slot the new node in right at the beginning, or last, which would mean it would add it to the last. We'll stick with sorted for the moment, and then we'll use the same TreeView command we've been using all along to add this one into our list. Now if we try running this, we'll see that we now have a plus beside the fiction node, and if we open that up, our new Starship Troopers book is on the list. Now this could be quite laborious, doing this for every single one you wish to add. So what we'll do is we will create another generic function whose job it is to add an entry by itself, minimizing the amount of coding you have to do. So our new function is going to have to take a couple of parameters. Again, the usual ones, the dialog handle, the handle to the TreeView control, the payment node we wish to add to, and the name of the book. So in one line we should be able to add this quite happily. We just have to code up this new function. Now here's our new function. Again, dialog, handle to the TreeView control, the string which is the node root, and the title of the book we wish to add. Now as we've done most of the coding for this already, this should just be a cut and paste job. First thing to do would be to get the TV node handle, and we've already written this function. Get the handle, and we're going to set the after variable. We'll keep them always sorted. We want to insert the data into the TreeView, again using the insert command we used previously. And the return of the function is going to be the value we got back to each item. And if we didn't manage to find what we were looking for up here for the node handle, we would return false, which is basically 0. So we try running this now, we should have another book added to the list, adding just one line of code. And there in our fiction is a new book. So any book we wish to add to the list now would just be a matter of adding another line of code to paste that in. Now, just to test out that both of our nodes are working correctly, I've added one to the fiction node and one to the non-fiction. Again, using our generic function. If we try running that, we should find our nodes are starting to be more populated. So we now have 4 books on the list, 3 fiction and 1 non-fiction. So you can see it's quite straightforward to actually build up your tree control. The next thing we want to do is we want to be able to allow the user to select one of the items on the tree control, and we'll want the name of the thing they've selected appearing over here. So in order to do that, we need to go to our event handler again. In here, this callback function handles all the events when things get clicked on. Now we're going to be using the notify event in this case to pick up the fact that something has been clicked on and we want to pick up the information. So we're going to put in a case notify as an event. Now for this particular one, there's some variables we'll want to set up at the beginning of our callback function so we can actually handle this properly. So we'll just go up to the top of the callback function and we'll paste them in. Now what we have in here is a pointer to a specific type. Now this is used to pick up what it is we've actually clicked on. And we've also got a handle for the node, a handle for the parent, a handle for the child, and a string variable for the text that's on the node that the user has actually selected. So if we go down to our notify command, we will see that the callback actually has in this nmhdr a pointer to the notification message header user defined type. Now this we can use to determine what's actually going on. So we're going to use a select case statement to pick up what's clicked on. This will tell us the actual event that's actually been triggered. Now if we had more than one tree control on the screen, we'd have to put a bit of extra code in here, but as there's only one tree control in here, it does make the code a little bit easier. So we're picking up a selection changed event, the tvn cell change DW. So we know in here that the TreeView selection has changed, and we want to get what has actually been selected by the user. So we're going to use the TreeView get select statement, and in here we're passing it the handle for the dialog, the handle for the tree control, and we're taking out the value to the node variable. Now that we have that, we can actually interrogate it to find out what text actually sits on that node using the TreeView get text command. And again, exactly the same parameters. We're giving it the H node we got from the previous one, and we're firing out the information to strtext. Now that we've got that, we can now display that in our text control, and we can see what the user has actually selected, just by using a simple control set text command to put the strtext into that box. So if we try running this now, there is our tree control, and each one you select, the text is being picked up and pushed over to the item selected. So as you'll see, it's quite easy to pick up what the user has actually done. So this has been a short introduction to TreeView controls. We'll cover more on these controls in a later video. But that's it for today. Thank you for watching.